Stop. Rewind. Play it again. That bark you just heard. The one that has the entire internet foaming at the mouth. The one that has middle-aged men writing essays like they're defending civilization itself. The one that has ex-users acting like Drake just walked into a nursing home and slapped a bingo card out of somebody's hand. That bark was not for you. It was never for you. And the fact that you thought it was, the fact that you got angry, wrote a paragraph, filmed a reaction video, and told the world how disappointed you were, is the single funniest confession the internet has coughed up all year. Because here's the part nobody has the guts to say out loud yet. Drake didn't lose. Drake didn't embarrass himself. Drake didn't fall off. Drake ran a $200 million magic trick live on camera, and the entire adult internet fell for the misdirection while a 26-year-old audience quietly cashed the check. Fam, sit down. Because I am about to walk you through the most surgically executed piece of celebrity marketing since streaming platforms became a country. And by the time we are done, you will not be mad at Drake. You will be mad at yourself for not seeing it in real time. You will be mad that a rapper from Toronto just outmaneuvered every media analyst, every podcast host, every op-ed writer, every commentary channel, and every self-appointed culture judge on the entire platform, and did it while smiling into a webcam with a glass of something expensive sitting next to his elbow. Look, I understand the reaction. I really do. You clicked on that kick stream expecting a party, a giveaway, a rap god cosplay, a Hermes unboxing, maybe a diss track teaser sliding in through the side door. Instead, you got a full-blown televised speed dating experiment with 3 finalists you'd never heard of and one very specific request whispered into a microphone. Would you bark for me? And then the bark heard around the world. And then the money. And then the meltdown. Everybody on the timeline pulled out their pitchforks. Everybody had a hot take ready in 3.5 minutes. Everybody suddenly became a cultural anthropologist. Every corner of the timeline became a courtroom, and Drake became the defendant. And the jury was made up of people who couldn't tell you the name of a single streamer in the top 10 if their rent depended on it. And every single one of them missed the play sitting directly in the middle of the frame, blinking with a red light on it. Every single one of them treated a marketing operation like a personality disorder. Every single one of them mistook a live commercial for a therapy session. And Drake didn't say a word. Drake didn't defend himself. Drake didn't post a note. Drake didn't record a response. Because when you're winning by that many points, you don't correct the scoreboard operator. You just keep scoring. Here's the thing. What you watched wasn't a slip. It wasn't Drake being weird for internet points. It wasn't a lonely millionaire trying to buy affection on livestream. It was a scripted, staged, sponsored, algorithm-tested, budget-approved, focus group piece of entertainment content. And I am going to prove it to you piece by piece before this video is over. I'm going to break down who the players actually are, why those 3 finalists were sitting on that couch, why the bark was mathematically inevitable, who the real audience was, what the real dollar figure attached to that 30-second clip looks like, and, most importantly, why a very quiet person inside the steak boardroom is right now looking at a spreadsheet and smiling in a way that should genuinely scare every legacy media executive on planet Earth. Listen, if you don't want the game, tap out now. Close the tab. Go argue about a bark on X for the rest of the weekend. That's fine. That's your choice. But if you want to understand why the internet just watched a 500 million impression event and mistook it for a scandal, you're in the right place. Sit down, get comfortable, and let me actually pull the curtain back on this thing. Because once you see the wires, you cannot unsee them. Before we open the file on this bark clip, I need you to zoom out. Way out. Because if you're still thinking about this as Drake barked at a girl and it's cringe, you are analyzing a chess move like it's a coin flip. What Drake did on that stream is not a moment. It's a data submission. It is a live, public, unignorable receipt that will sit on the negotiating table the next time a 9-figure sponsorship contract gets signed in this space. And I don't mean in 5 years. I mean the next time. Possibly this quarter. Because the streaming economy, the one your favorite think piece writer keeps pretending is a phase, is currently in the middle of quietly eating the entertainment industry alive, and Drake is not a passenger in that shift. Drake is one of the drivers. And what looked to you like a corny moment was, from the other side of the table, a marketing exhibit worth more than most companies' entire annual ad budgets. This is not opinion. This is not vibes. This is a very specific, very deliberate, very expensive playbook being executed at the highest possible level by a team of people who know exactly how many dollars a second of attention is worth in the year we're currently living in. And if that sounds dramatic to you, ask yourself why some of the biggest advertising budgets on earth are quietly migrating away from Sunday primetime and into Saturday night kick streams. It is not because those executives lost their minds. It is because they finally read the numbers. Let's start with the couch. Jordan Lucas, Lena the Plug, and Pink Shiu, the goth streamer. If you were sitting there squinting at your screen going, who are these people and why is Drake, one of the biggest recording artists on the planet, sitting across from them like this, is The Bachelor Kick Edition? Congratulations, you just admitted you are not the target demographic. You were never supposed to know them. And that is not an accident. That is the entire point. Jordan Lucas has over 500,000 people following her on Instagram alone, is a full-time streamer, and has a young, live, opinionated audience that reacts to everything she does in real time. Lena the Plug, you already know how she got here, and you already know exactly how many people follow her every move online. Pink Shiu, the goth streamer, is one of those creators sitting at the top of a niche that legacy media does not know how to price yet. Dark aesthetic, loyal fanbase, chronically online, extremely clip-worthy on camera. Now take those 3 followings, stack them, and add Drake's own footprint. That is not a dating show. That is a coordinated audience swap engineered to detonate on multiple algorithms simultaneously. That is 3 separate content ecosystems being physically welded together in one room for one night, in front of one camera, for one purpose, cross-pollination. Each one of those women walked away with the same thing every guest on a late-night talk show has walked away with for the last 60 years, exposure. And Drake walked away with 3 brand new demographic slices of an audience he doesn't already dominate. And once you see it that way, ask yourself the obvious question. Did any of those 3 people look like they thought they were about to marry Drake? No. They looked like they were about to trend. Because that was the deal. That was always the deal. You and I sat there watching what we thought was courtship. What we were actually watching was a live broadcast branded content deal with a 5-figure participation fee attached to every finalist that survived the bracket. That is not cynicism. That is production. That is the business those women are already in. You do not walk onto a live stream that is being watched by 6 figures of concurrent viewers by mistake. You do not appear on a Drake-hosted Kick broadcast by lottery. You get invited. Somebody's team calls somebody else's team. Numbers get discussed. Release forms get signed. And on the night of, everybody puts on their best character, their best posture, their best on-camera reflexes, and they play the part. And when the check clears the next morning, because that check absolutely cleared, everybody wakes up with more followers, more clip velocity, more search volume, and more industry value than they had the day before. Everybody wins. Except the people at home writing essays. And even they, in a strange, upside-down way, win a little, because their engagement volume goes up too, and their comment sections light up, and their own algorithm rewards them for hitching a ride on the biggest topic of the week. The only real loser in the whole equation is the person watching all of it happen and refusing to name what they are looking at. That person walks away confused, angry, and out of pocket for a weekend of their own attention. Every other participant in the ecosystem, from Drake down to the smallest reaction channel, walks away with more than they came in with. That is what a functioning attention economy actually looks like when it is running full throttle, and Saturday night was as clean an example of it as anybody has captured on camera in years. Now here's where the discourse really loses the plot. Everybody on the timeline this week is holding this stream up like it's a moral failing. Drake gave those women money. Drake handed out cash for barking. Drake is corny for spending his money like this. His money. Please. That is not his money. That is a stake-sponsored anniversary event. That budget was carved out and greenlit and signed off on inside a marketing meeting in a building that has legal review, brand review, and probably a slide deck with the words Target CTR on it. Every dollar that flew across that stream Saturday night was, from an accounting perspective, an advertising expense. Drake was a paid performer executing a brief. The brief was, make this platform the loudest name in the room for 24 consecutive hours. Mission accomplished, and then some. And if you don't believe me, go find one, just one, press cycle in the last 90 days that pushed more search volume for the platform than this stream did. You will not find it. Not on daytime television. Not on the Super Bowl. Not on any award show. This one, singular, 30-second bark did more brand awareness lifting for one sponsor in one night than most companies pay agencies 6 months to try to replicate. That is not a scandal. That is a case study. You don't cut a 9-figure ambassadorship check to somebody so they can just play blackjack on camera. You cut that check because you want a scene, you want a moment, you want an unmissable, unignorable, undeniable piece of content that eats every other conversation on the internet for the next 72 hours. That is exactly what Drake delivered. And the 27 of you who spent the weekend clutching pearls about how he shouldn't be doing this, you were the algorithm's favorite little foot soldiers. You clipped it. You reposted it. You quote tweeted it. You made reaction videos. You typed the word Drake more times in 3 days than you typed your own name. Congratulations. You just did unpaid labor for Steak's marketing department, and you did it wearing a costume that said, "I'm above this." You did the work of a paid ad buyer for free while telling everybody around you that Drake was embarrassing himself. That is a very specific kind of self-inflicted comedy that only the internet can produce. And if you laughed at anybody all weekend, you should have started with the mirror. Drake and Steak had you doing sponsored posts on your own accounts, and you posted them for the low price of $0 and a bruised ego. Buckle up, because what happens next is louder. I know you clicked on this to hear about the bark. Fine, let's do the bark. But I need you to keep in your head everything we just laid out, because when I roll this next clip and connect the next dot, you're going to feel it. The bark was not spontaneous. The bark was scheduled. The bark had a name attached to it long before Drake ever leaned into that microphone. And once you know that name, you will never see this moment the same way again. Once you know that name, the whole scene rearranges itself in your head, and every commentator who missed this reference is going to look, in retrospect, like somebody who tried to review a movie by watching only the trailer for a different movie. That is the level of miss we are talking about here. That is the caliber of blindness this generation of media analysts just publicly performed on themselves. 20 years ago, if I stopped a random person on any American sidewalk and asked, "Who is the most famous person on the planet who barks?" you'd get one answer, maybe two. 9 out of 10 people would say DMX. Rough, head down, arms out, growling into the mic on the corner of MTV. A tiny percentage might say Baha Men, because Who Let the Dogs Out was on every stadium speaker between 2000 and 2003. That was the year's answer. That answer aged out. The clock kept moving. And a whole new generation grew up in a world where a completely different bark became the loudest bark on the internet. That generation did not sit in your living room. That generation did not watch your MTV. That generation did not memorize your rap videos. That generation grew up with a phone in their hand, a subscribe button under their thumb, and a completely different set of celebrities than the ones you grew up idolizing. And in that generation, one specific bark took over the entire cultural conversation, and it did not belong to DMX, and it did not belong to Baha Men, and it did not belong to any rapper you can name off the top of your head. Now walk up to a 20-year-old today and ask the same question. Ask a 21-year-old. Ask a 19-year-old. Ask anyone under 25 who spends more than an hour a day on YouTube, Kick, Twitch, or gaming shorts. And I promise you the answer is not DMX. The answer is iShowSpeed. That's it. That's the name. The single most viewed streamer on planet Earth. The man who during the last World Cup pulled over 1 billion, with AB, views by himself, is the person this generation associates with the sound of a bark. It became his verbal signature. It is his running visual joke. It is the meme that put him on billboards, into stadiums, and inside the room with global superstars. And Drake, who has been navigating streaming culture for years, who has been slowly, deliberately building bridges into that space, knew that. Everybody in that room knew that. Everybody in that chat knew that. The only people who didn't know were the people writing think pieces about it 48 hours later. That is the entire tragedy of this news cycle in one sentence. The commentators who lined up to punish Drake for barking did not realize they were reviewing a joke without knowing the punchline, without knowing the setup, without knowing the two comedians who were actually telling it. They walked into the middle of somebody else's inside joke and started grading it on a rubric they invented in the parking lot. So when Drake leaned in and quietly asked one of the finalists to bark, he wasn't asking her. He was asking Speed. He was speaking directly, live, on camera, to a specific streamer with 60 million subscribers on his flagship platform alone, and by extension to the enormous mixed audience Speed shares with Kai Cenat, arguably the most influential American streamer alive in the urban space, whose own community was watching that Steak broadcast in parallel. This was not flirting. This was a public inside joke bounced between two of the biggest names in modern internet culture, with a global audience of tens of millions holding the microphone between them. And the receipt for that came the very next day, when Drake posted directly to iShowSpeed's story reacting to the moment. That is not a coincidence. That is a punchline landing exactly where it was aimed. That is one performer signaling the other, in a language only their shared audience fully understands, using a live stream as the delivery mechanism. That is a comedian checking with his co-star to make sure the timing hit. That is a marketing operator confirming the play landed with the exact person he was aiming at. That is not a mistake. That is not a stumble. That is not a lonely millionaire on a live stream. That is a professional executing a bit at the highest possible level, in front of the biggest possible audience, on the most searchable possible platform. You want to know who understood the play in real time? Speed. That's it. Speed and Kai Cenat and everybody in that ecosystem understood it before the clip even finished uploading. While your favorite 35-year-old commentator was recording a moral panic monologue in his podcast booth, Speed was reacting to the clip and laughing. Because Speed had context. Speed had the reference. Speed had the joke. Kai Cenat had the reference. Ben Dodon had the reference. Everybody at Streamer University had the reference. Everybody in that room, that ecosystem, that particular slice of the internet, understood in real time that they were witnessing not a scandal but a wink. And they winked back. And they clipped it. And they promoted it. And they built entire supplementary reaction streams off of it. And every one of those streams pulled its own six-figure concurrent viewership, and every one of those streams became its own micro-broadcast for the same brand, the same platform, the same night, the same bark. The scale of it, once you see it laid out, is genuinely absurd. The one person on Earth qualified to explain what really happened in that 30 seconds isn't sitting in an X space arguing with strangers. It's a 19-year-old with a headset and a billion-plus World Cup views. Let that sink in. The frame of reference for this entire cultural moment has moved. It has moved off television. It has moved off traditional radio. It has moved off print. It has moved into a small, extremely fast, very online room of streamers whose average viewer is 20-something and whose collective monthly reach dwarfs whatever nightly news broadcast you grew up trusting. That's not an opinion. That's a spreadsheet. And Drake is playing in that spreadsheet with both hands. Drake has been in that spreadsheet for years. He was in it when it was a small room. He is in it now that it is a stadium. And he will be in it long after your favorite legacy outlet has quietly downgraded from cable to podcast to newsletter to hospice. That is where the eyes are. That is where the money is going. And that is why every play he makes right now is calibrated for that room, not yours. Let's do the numbers, because numbers don't cry on X. Drake's own live stream on Kick that night peaked around 200,000 concurrent viewers, respectable, but not the headline. Simultaneously, Kai Cenat and iShowSpeed were live in a parallel stream, drawing somewhere in the neighborhood of 279,000 concurrent viewers, reacting in and around the same event. That is the small ceiling. Now stack Speed's roughly 60 million subscribers on his flagship platform, subscribers, not casual viewers, into the recommendation graph. Then layer the bar clip itself, which cleared over 11 million views on a single upload and got mirrored across TikTok, Instagram Reels, Facebook, Snapchat, Threads, X, and every regional aggregator with a phone and an editing app. Conservative cross-platform impressions land somewhere between 50 and 100 million. Realistic ceiling by the end of the week, north of 500 million. 500 million impressions off a 30-second clip. That is not a viral moment. That is a national broadcast masquerading as a livestream accident. That is Super Bowl advertising reach without the Super Bowl advertising price. That is a coordinated distributed media event that did not, at any point, require a single network affiliate, a single cable box, a single satellite dish, or a single traditional gatekeeper to say yes. It happened in spite of every legacy media instinct on Earth, and it happened faster than any legacy outlet on Earth could react to it. Now stop and picture the negotiating table. Picture Drake's team sitting across from Stakes executives at contract renewal time. Picture a laptop opening. Picture a slide with those numbers on it. Picture the exact moment that ambassadorship goes from a 9-figure conversation to a why is anyone else in this category still on payroll conversation. That is what actually happened in that stream. That is the trick. Everybody watching thought they were watching a man look for love. What they were actually watching was a man file the receipt for his next renegotiation. And that receipt is not going anywhere. That receipt lives on YouTube forever. That receipt lives on TikTok forever. That receipt lives on every reaction channel that dunked on it. And every dunk quietly rehosts the original bark for anyone curious enough to search for it. Drake did not just do a good marketing job. He created a permanent archival marketing asset that will keep generating impressions for years. And every one of those impressions goes into the same file. And that file has a number on the bottom of it. And that number goes up. And here is the part where I have to be honest with you. Because I love you. Because I am not going to lie to you. If you are over 30, if you are over 32, if you are over 35, if you are over 40, Drake is not talking to you. He is not marketing to you. He is not chasing you. He does not need you. He locked you in as a fan 15 years ago when you were a teenager or in your early 20s, and either you're still riding or you already jumped ship, and either way your consumer decision on Drake is done. There is nothing left to convert. You are not the growth market. You are the harvested market. You are the market whose loyalty has already been priced in. There is no boardroom on earth spending real money to convince you of anything, because you have already made your choice. Whichever choice that was. Drake's team knows that. Drake's team is not fighting for your streams anymore. They are fighting for the streams of somebody 20 years younger than you. And those streams are worth more, Because those streams stack over the next 15 years of that person's life, not the next 5 of yours. The growth market is on Twitch, where the median user is 26. The growth market is on Kick, where the audience skews even younger and even more chronically online. The growth market is inside YouTube's gaming category, where somewhere around 62% of the audience sits between 20 and 29 years old. That is who Drake was speaking to. That is who Drake was courting. Not the goth streamer. Not Lena. Not Jordan. The audience. The eyes. The wallets that haven't been claimed by a competing artist yet. That entire live stream, every frame of it, was a bid for the next 15 years of consumer loyalty from a demographic that a lot of legacy artists don't even know how to talk to. That is the whole game. That is the whole play. That is why every gesture in that stream was calibrated for a specific chatroom demographic, not a New York Times op-ed page. And if you didn't get it, that's not on Drake. That's on you for confusing yourself with the target. So while you were on X writing a sermon, a 19-year-old was on Kick watching this and thinking, okay, Drake gets it. And that is a conversion event. That is a customer acquisition metric. That is a data point his team is going to point at every single time someone in a boardroom asks whether Drake is still relevant. Fam, you didn't miss the joke. You were the joke. And I say that with love. And I say that with the softness of somebody who wants you to understand what actually happened. So the next time one of these plays runs, you see it a second earlier, and you save yourself the embarrassment of publicly filing a moral complaint against a piece of paid content. Let me put you inside the steak boardroom for a second. Somewhere in that building, there is an executive whose entire job is to justify the Drake budget line. Just imagine that job. You have to walk into a quarterly review and defend spending 9 figures on one human being. That is a scary chair to sit in. That is a chair where every quarter you need something to point to that says this was worth it. And on Saturday night, that person was handed the single most defensible 30 seconds of their entire career. 500 million impressions. A worldwide news cycle. Rap podcasts. Sports podcasts. Morning shows. Talk shows. TikTok. Every meme account with more than 10,000 followers. Free. Every last dollar of it. Free. The paid budget was the stream. The $500 million in downstream attention was gravy. That executive is not sweating. That executive just got promoted. That executive is currently walking into their CEO's office with a printed graph, pointing at a spike, and asking for a raise. That executive is untouchable for the rest of the fiscal year. That executive just outperformed every other marketing lead in their entire industry vertical with one 30-second clip. And that is why, when the contract renewal hits, whenever that is, whether that's 6 months from now or 18, Drake walks in with the biggest single clip case study in modern branded content history sitting on the table. He does not walk in as a rapper asking for a check. He walks in as a media company. He walks in as a distribution engine. He walks in as somebody who moved a 9-figure platform's brand awareness in a single evening while the internet threw itself a tantrum. That is not a rapper. That is not a musician. That is not even a celebrity. That is a modern advertising vehicle with a human face on it. And there is a growing list of them. And Drake happens to be one of the sharpest. And every renegotiation he does from this point forward is anchored against this receipt. And every dollar he asks for is justified by this receipt. And every skeptic in every boardroom for the next 3 years is going to be silenced by this receipt. That is the actual outcome of that bark. That is the actual scoreboard. Everything else is noise. If you want more proof that Drake is not doing this by accident, look at Streamer University. Look at the way he showed up, gave gifts, embraced the creators, took photos, dropped Nocta and OVO gear like it was a school welcome kit, and treated the next generation of digital talent like they were the actual future, because they are. That was not charity. That was distribution strategy. Every hoodie he handed out is now a walking billboard. Every photo he took is now a piece of user-generated marketing content those creators will keep uploading for years. Every young streamer in that room now has a personal Drake anecdote they can bring up on stream, in a podcast, in an interview, forever. That is compounding brand equity. That is not something you can buy with a media buy. That is not something a traditional PR agency can manufacture. That is not something that shows up on a spreadsheet as a line item, but it shows up in the trajectory of an artist over the next decade, and it is worth more than any billboard, any magazine cover, any late-night booking, and any award show performance combined. And by the way, this is exactly why some of your favorite older creators are quietly panicking right now, because the Drake outrage economy is drying up. Every commentary channel that built its numbers off dunking on Drake is watching that well go dry. And the reason it's going dry is that the next wave of the audience does not consume information the way you do. They don't sit through 15-minute takedown essays. They don't want somebody wagging a finger. They want the moment. They want the meme. They want the guy who was in the middle of it. Drake understood that shift 6 years ago. A lot of people in the media business still haven't caught up. That is the actual generational shift you're refusing to see. That is why the bark hit different in different rooms. In one room, it was cringe. In every other room, it was content. And guess which room is bigger? Guess which room is growing? Guess which room advertisers are chasing? Guess which room every media company in America is quietly copying, whether or not their public-facing branding will ever admit it. The answer to all four of those questions is the same room, and it is not the room where somebody just called Drake corny. Now, you want to talk about corny? Let's talk about corny. Corny is spending your Saturday night writing a 2,000-word essay about a bark. Corny is filming a 15-minute takedown of a live stream you would never have watched if you weren't planning to yell about it. Corny is standing on your porch yelling "get off my lawn" at teenagers who don't even know what a lawn is. Corny is the audacity of thinking that a 40-year-old moral verdict on a bark somehow matters to a 22-year-old whose entire content diet is streamers and clips. You want Drake to stop being corny? Stop watching. Stop clipping. Stop reposting. Stop typing his name. Stop giving him 500 million impressions worth of unpaid promotion every time he blinks on a live stream. But you won't. And you won't because your own audience has been conditioned to hate him. And every time you serve them another plate, they show up hungry. That is your business model. That is not media criticism. That is a farm. And the crop is outrage. And the harvest is clicks. And the clicks feed you. And you know it. And I know it. And Drake knows it. And Steak knows it. And every single person in the room with a marketing degree knows it. The only people who don't know it are the audience being fed, and by the time they figure it out, the game will have moved on to the next play. Here's the punchline you don't want to admit. The more you complain, the more Drake wins. Every click is a click. Every reaction is a reaction. Every hate video adds to the engagement graph. Every screenshot of a screenshot pushes the algorithm to serve the original clip to more people. There is no version of this scenario where the "he's over" narrative actually plays out. There is only louder, only bigger, only more distributed. And you're the distribution. You are the distribution engine that Drake did not have to pay for. You are the influencer, uncompensated, unaware, and unwilling to acknowledge that when you criticize a piece of content, you are also boosting it. That is the paradox of the current media economy. That is why the modern celebrity does not fear the takedown video. That is why the modern celebrity does not fear the moral panic. That is why the modern celebrity, in fact, welcomes it. Because in a world where attention is the only real currency, the harshest critic is the most productive publicist, and the loudest moralist is the biggest amplifier. So let me bring it home for you. If you take nothing else away from this breakdown, take this. The bark wasn't a scandal. The bark was a Trojan horse. Inside that Trojan horse was a media strategy so sharp, so quietly aggressive, so ruthlessly targeted, that 30 years from now business school students will be studying it in celebrity branding lectures the same way ad students study the Apple 1984 Super Bowl commercial. That's not hyperbole. That is a serious prediction from somebody who has watched more of these plays unfold than he can count. The joke was not on Drake. The joke was not on the finalists. The joke was not on iShowSpeed. The joke was on the audience that thought they were watching something spontaneous when they were actually watching a coordinated attention operation with a 9-figure sponsor and a 500 million impression outcome. That is what happened. That is what actually happened. And now you know. Now you cannot unknow it. Now the next time one of these bigger-than-life live stream moments detonates on your timeline, you have to ask yourself the question professional marketers ask themselves in real time. Who benefits? Who is paying? Who is the actual audience? And what is being sold under the surface of what is being shown? Those 4 questions unlock more of your feed than any moral compass ever will. I don't need you to like Drake. You don't have to like Drake. I don't like every move Drake makes, either. But I refuse to sit here and let a masterclass go unrecognized because a bunch of people in their late 30s suddenly discovered they have a moral compass on a Saturday night. Give the man his flowers on the strategy. You can hand him the LS on whatever else you want to hand him LS on. That's fine. That's fair game. But not this one. Not the bark. This one he cooked. This one he executed. This one, he delivered on time, on budget, and on brand. With a global audience watching, with legacy media asleep at the switch, with the entire next generation of streamers cheering from parallel windows, and with a sponsor sitting in the corner of the frame counting an unearned windfall in real time. That is the play. That is the whole play. That is the play the game will study for years, whether you personally approve of it or not. Alright, that's the whole story from where I'm sitting. Now you tell me, was that bark a career-defining marketing masterstroke that literally just got captured on livestream in real time? Or was Drake genuinely corny, and I'm out here inventing a chess game where there wasn't even a checkers board? 2 options. Pick one. Tell me down below. I'm reading every last one of them. especially the angry ones, because those are always the funniest. And if you liked this breakdown, if you felt yourself sitting up a little straighter in your chair while I was walking through those numbers, do me one favor. Hit like, subscribe, turn the bell on, because there is another one of these dropping this week, and it is about a boardroom war you have not heard about yet. And once you see who's in the room, you are going to want a seat. Until then, keep your eyes on the receipts, keep your ears on the room, and stop being the last person to laugh at the joke. I'm out.